Hey. So, I am kind of in a karmic situation with my mother-in-law, and I'm not really sure if that should make me feel bad about it. My 52-year-old mother-in-law is a bit nosy, but that never got to me, because she was always lovely towards me. I have been with my 30-year-old husband for the last 6 years, married 3. I am 27 and gave birth our daughter a little over a month ago. My husband is in the Air Force, so he deployed about 2 months after my daughter was born and won't be back for another couple. It upset me he was leaving so soon and only got to spend the last few weeks of my pregnancy with me. But when duty calls, who am I to stop it from taking you? He left Nina with me, so of course I felt safe. We had a conversation the night before he left, Nina and I, which ended with her deciding not to return home so that she could stay at my place to try and help me. I was glad about it because I thought that this is the kind of help I could really use. Since Notre Dame area, an additional interesting question to ask yourself right now, whereas most changes are just background process. How can random people interact? We got pregnant shortly after we moved here, and I didn't have time to really make friends who could be my support circle. Then my husband left and, well, things took a different turn. Sad to say, but poor Nina was quite the moocher. The first few days I was way too busy to even notice. Also, I began to realize that I was the one who did everything in our house, including managing that kid. Nina talked over the phone in only the guest room and would come out of her room during food, compliment my cooking skills, before going back inside. My husband and I assumed that when we chatted, she would be willing to keep an eye on him as he was off, leaving me having to do almost double the things because suddenly there were going tasks, whereas none had been. I called her out once she had been living with me for 2 weeks. I was a little rude and said, "You mean you needed me to task you?" She could tell there were things I needed help with, but she never would have known what to do if didn't ever come out of our room. Well, I gave it the benefit of the doubt and told her what needs doing around house, etc. Even so, she wasn't really any better. When I would ask her to do it, she would put it off until much later, many times after days had already passed, or even longer, that I personally ended up doing the task at hand because of how unproductive and compliant. Additionally, sometimes she'd just forget completely. After a while, I was becoming very frustrated with her, and towards the end of that month. So one day I told her, "This isn't working out for me anymore. Have to go." If I was by myself, at least only all of the work would be left to me. After all, there is no point in needing less when you are just one person anyway. Everything I had to do now, from the chores at home all by myself and living on my own as well. She was getting annoyed and started calling me a brat. I was told to be glad that she offered anything at all. Then, she finally admitted that her assumption had been, I would work with the baby and do all household things. I have no idea why she thought that was going to happen, because I am the mother. I was me, this person who spent 9 months growing the baby and then also went through labor. Therefore, now I was the only one who would have her for longer hours. If she really was coming over to help me, then take that shit off my hands so I can bust the move with Bubs and get some pet hair free solace in 10-20 mins more of worshipping at the Church of Cleanliness a day. When I told her to get out, she informed me that even though she had thought we'd be together for a long time, hence why it was okay with end the lease on an apartment, if she couldn't stay in my home, then where would she go? That really told her that she was, in fact, a freeloader. She just didn't want to pay rent, and that's why she had moved in with me pretending that was going to be helping me. When I found out, I was livid and said that her situation meant nothing to me. She just needed to leave my house. So, she finally left a couple days back. Semi-embarrassed and crying, I called my parents after she left that day to have them come over. My parents and my sister live in another state, so while they were there for the birth, and delayed their return flight until 3 days afterwards, by early trainee G yesterday, all I had left was hubs. They wanted to stay so they could help me take care of the baby, and I said no, because didn't want my parents leaving their store for that long. And by the time she promised me that, Nina had already decided on my behalf to keep this house and come live with me here to look after it all. However, I badly needed someone to stick around just for me after sending her away, so rang my mum and dad. They caught the next fight they could here and have been staying with me ever since. No stress at the store either. My uncles are taking care of things on their own for a bit. Well, it is almost 4 days she did not live in my house already. I also spoke to my husband about it and said Nina was a total waste of space living here. After it happened, I did not share this with him because his mother was still here helping me out at home, except taking care of the kids meant more time in front of a screen. Agreeing with me, he simply said, "You made the right choice." So last night I got a ton of text messages from Nina about how it was all my fault, and now she had ruined her life. Baffled, I called my husband. He explained that he had called the other family members and convinced them to cut her off completely. And now she was in trouble, because up until this point she had been staying with his uncle as well, and even he kicked her out back then, hence all the hateasement of days. It turns out she had been attempting to sabotage our relationship all the while, telling my husband what I got up to behind his back when I was home alone with her. You see, just that. She said some terrible things about me to my husband, like that I was fucking the next-door neighbor or something. So a paternity test would be in order, and he should hotfoot it back there post-haste, because she wasn't certain the baby was his. When she walked through the door, I asked her why, and was met with a less than resounding response of, "Because you lied about everything." She said that I had driven her away, because she scares me, and that he would leave me. Those were the terrible, nasty lies she was spreading with me, to literally divide my husband and myself up. At least he was, comfortingly enough, that much better then. He ignored her immediately. I couldn't be happier to know he knew it, without even having to say a word about this, or confront me. It also kind of seemed like common sense, since our house had this guy in his early 20s living next door, who just inherited the place from an aunt or something, and spends most weekends playing violin really badly. I used to whine at my husband. More on how this has likely never in history worked for anyone, ever, when we first moved out because he was just so bad. She would have singled me up with another man. Otherwise, so she will not actually understood me. So after these lies from Nina on phone, he thought to himself, "Hey, why should every relative be missed?" He explained everything to them and said that he did not want anyone dealing with Nina after he cleared out from there. He told them that if they did, then we would never talk to you again. So, he more or less forced his family to pick a side, and it turns out no one is talking to Nina at the moment, because even her brother has kicked her out of the house. I feel like that was a punishment more than warranted, as I had this conversation with my husband last night, and blocked her so that she could not text me telling to have some sympathy for what just something unfortunate, because none of it is actually anything but bullshit. That was also in her texts, with the words that I ruined it. I woke up to her knocking at my door, screaming that I was the reason she lost her home, and demanding I let me in, telling that you are going to live with us now. She just needed a place to crash for a few days before she could begin scouring local listings. I was wondering why she would have to get a house near us. Then she said that regardless of how things worked out between us, on the weekends was coming and going to get time with her granddaughter whenever wanted. I kinda liked that she tried to up the ante. I straight up told her that she would not even meet your son when he came back. I stated that she had to go back right now, or I would make a phone call, and as soon as the officers arrived, she suddenly was like little kids started yelling me, "Scooter stomping her noise." What? She was very upset, said it wasn't fair at all, and that she was far too old to be hanging out with us when my husband. I should have been caring for her every need instead of trying to make a baby play. Friend. Who knows why she thought that in the first place? We were pretty vocal about this when we discussed it. We were going to divide the labor between us. She'd do all of the more involved, time-consuming stuff, while I was just in charge of watching him. Everything had been straight up until now, and she was the one who went ahead and threw all of our agreements out the window to assume her own thing. Then we didn't even hear from her again. She just broke the lease. I mean, really, how is any of this our fault overall fucking fiffy? And for the record, that's buckets young. If she was really that old and tired, then what the fuck did she offer to help me for? For some reason, our argument escalated and got uglier as it went along, because she was so irritating. And she began battering her way in, luggage and all, to my front door, where I'd shut it as best I could. Yes, slamming too, after a huge struggle on my part, because the woman wanted to come live with me. So I guess she felt entitled to this. I mean, she's the one who seemed to really relish trying to destroy my marriage while I was caring for our 1-month-old baby. So maybe this will help her, then again. But the point that I am trying to make here is after I went back inside and shut the door, she began crying louder, saying she had nowhere else to go. She obviously did not want to spend a great amount of money at motels, so she was actually begging me for her words now, asking forgiveness that there might help one in your arms. I was so close to cracking, as I had only given birth a few weeks ago, and am still not back into my own body with the stage of emotion, hormones all over the place. However, I was admonished by my parents. They told me this woman had already attempted to destroy my marriage with his father, and that I should not get back in touch again. So we said until she left, let's just not acknowledge her. And now I feel a little guilty about that, because I do not know. Just, maybe, could have let her stay with me for like 2 days. But she would still have to go somewhere. And my husband and parents keep telling me I did nothing wrong, but I'm not convinced. So, what do you guys think? AITAA for not taking my mother-in-law in after telling me that the rest of our family had cut her off because of an argument between us. Edit. Anyway, my father-in-law is out of the picture, but he died a few years ago. Ever since, it has been my husband supporting his mother. Her husband actually left her next to no money because he had a very long illness, and most of his funds went towards the cost of it. This did not include the house that they lived in, but he left her with this, and she sold it to move into a small apartment. But then she terminated that lease agreement as well. My husband sends money to his mother every month, and she has managed to live a pretty sweet life until now. But, subject to, quote, she shut off on him and long gone. Now he not gonna be sending her money. So now I just keep my fingers crossed that whatever she received after the sale of our house saved her some and was able to last, in living on her own, or else she'll be screwed at least financially. Update 1. Hello guys. Indeed it has been too long of a silence. Not a single peep out Izzy since she turned tail and went slinking off, ripping Nina along with her. It had been 3 full days, and I was beginning to hope that she learned her lesson. Maybe. But it was simply too good to be true. Besides, she had seemed far more likely to give a damn about something like life and death. Like I wrote in the first part of my original blog entry, she has always been quite nosy. I mean, I guess she got some people from my husband's family in on it as well, and have began harassing me. Her pals, mostly those her age, who still believe every word that she spouts. In other words, a few women in my husband's family sit with her and talk shit about everyone at every single family gathering. That means that I'm not really surprised to see them in her corner this go-round. I am pretty sure they don't even believe her side of the story, but they just want to be in on it. That's why they are making it on my account and subjecting me to this role here, so that others will talk about them, not so as the same people who made their voices heard. Then they began texting me from a bunch of different numbers, and I had to block all of them because these messages were nasty. They claimed I had an affair with my neighbor, and that the only reason Nina would be dead was because she found out about me. You went as far to say that I was trying to control my husband to go against his mom, and somehow, someway, have her kicked out of the family. They told me, you can't keep this a secret, because eventually the truth would come out. Listen, I do not even care if they are targeting me to get at someone else. but my integrity is called into question in the midst of their games, and it does bother me. I have discussed this with my husband, and he has informed me that he will try to work on it. But I know that he can't. He's done all he can, and told his family to have nothing more to do with Nina. But of course they've made it equally clear where they are standing, right beside her. Eventually, I will just have to ignore them. I am just so emotional. Like right now, shit is getting on my nerves, and I hate it. But what can you do? I have my parents with me right now, and Matt said he will try to come visit as soon as possible. But I have to tune these people out and not let this get the best of me for now, because at end, before God, I know my truth also who am as person. On fait que ça quoi de se détendre, alors j'essaie. Update 2. That's when it hit me. Something had been off. A week since my last update, and for the past 4 days, no such text or whatever from Nina and her band of weirdos. So, honestly, I believe they may have simply stopped trying to annoy me by attempting to hit a nerve. Last update, a couple of texts from her and friends on SM as well. They were telling me they would demand the truth be told, and even stated that if it took them speaking to our neighbor, so he revealed what a terrible woman I was, who had been having an affair for years. They were totally convinced. In their minds, this was an actual thing. Bless their delusional hearts. That did not really scare me because I knew the truth. I told my husband, and he assured me that there was no need to be concerned with any of this, and that I had absolutely nothing to worry about ever regarding his opinion. I knew not to worry either. My husband had talked to the rest of his family too, and they also called me telling me how these women who were on Nina's side did not have them in their lives anymore. They were rooting for me, and was so confident on everything, up until I found out that her family had also disowned Nina and those fake friends of hers. They quit texting me, which makes sense because obviously this was going nowhere, and really not worth the effort drama-wise. The last text message I have from any of these people is 4 days ago. Sometime in the evening, I got an email, most likely from Nina, a very curt one. She told me that she had found an apartment, and then made sure I pay for making her family hate her because of something stupid as trying to ruin her life. She would say like, "The lazy cow? My son could have anyone else. But he chooses this hideous, repulsive creature over his own mother, who I'm sure it wouldn't last long with." She told me she was already trying to find the next man for her, now that I had served my only, wifely, duty, and could be disposed of. Along with informing others, our marriage is on its way out. This is exactly what she thought. Because I had given birth to a baby, and in the process put on some weight too, that my husband was going to leave me now. Well, yes, this was all quite nutty, considering I had been the one who apparently cheated before, and now she is going to see that my husband cheats on me. It's just confusing. Anyways, I ended up blocking that email address and never heard from her again. It was weird for a few days, but now it makes me feel much better without having to worry she would get back in contact with me. Update 3. Well, I suppose I spoke too soon, since just 2 days ago had been the day in which was talking about how much I said that Nina and her cohort of losers finally grown up to let me be. All of them paid me the visit and tried to intimidate, but they learnt their lesson. 2 hours ago, the doorbell rang repeatedly. Someone was at the door, and I just knew that it had to be them. So when I went to look out of my bedroom window, it really was Nina Plus. All her mates stood there. It was a group of about 6 women who looked like they were on business. Therefore, I immediately addressed them through the intercom and said, "You can get out of here, or else I'll call the cops." I was mostly anxious about my baby, because I had managed to get my daughter down for a nap, and she screamed all day. I, for one, didn't want to wake her up, and I know that if all of them had turned you together, then there was definitely going to be some fight or dispute, which I really didn't wanted. I shooed them away and was turning to walk back inside so that I could retrieve my phone from its charger next to the bed, when one of these women decided it would be a great idea to grab hold of a stone on our front lawn and throw her makeshift missile through said window. My window burst open, and glass was spread across my living room. Phil and Ray. I was so shocked, and, just like clockwork, the other ladies joined in throwing rocks through the glass. It was the moment when I had to go and hide behind Tay couch, because it looked like a matter of life or death, which really is not one that I want to find myself in. All our rocks are medium-sized decorative ones from the yard, so there were quite a few that they could throw. When they were throwing rocks at the windows, I couldn't even go to my room for my phone. That's how dangerous it was, because of any sudden movements could lead to harm. So much so that when my parents arrived to see what it all was, I shooed them out the door and told them they needed to go over to nursery, because all I cared about is if my daughter was okay. This went on for nearly 2 whole minutes, and by the end of it, my living room was covered in glass, shards, and pebbles. I did not even have the nerve to walk across a floor and go to my room because I was in socks, and there is no way that I am going anywhere without walking. I hunkered behind the couch and was sobbing. I mean, that how scared. And then the worst part of all began. I assumed they would be gone once my front room windows were finished being completely smashed in, leaving no way for me to escape and phone the police. Only, soon, it came banging on the door. They may have tried to kick the door, but luckily they were not hefty enough. And when they attempted to do so, finally the cops arrived, probably because my parents called. My mother and father had to basically clean it all up because I was crouched in fright behind the couch when the cops found me later, more than a little traumatized. The police had to take me, and I was still crying the entire way in. Realistically, I just fell asleep crying. I awoke the next day to find Nina and her gang dispersed, my parents having for some reason cleaned up all of the shattered glass and rocks too. We still don't live in the house, because windows are changed, and until another cold air comes directly from outside. For visit, you can stay there as long as it gets, till freeze time. When I woke up, they told me that I was sleeping, which never remembered, and they had made me sleep earlier. Only my mother sat beside me as it was all happening, while she and my dad dealt with the cops, pressing charges against Nina. Fucking finally. They also informed me that my daughter was awakened by the noise and rocks being thrown at windows, banging about, etc. And I spent every waking minute with her those few hours afterward. She didn't even leave my sight for a second. My dad told me that he would get it all fixed up, and that the living room would be open in a day or 2. I did not need to worry about any of this. He had talked to my husband as well, and was on his way back this weekend, so that he could be there for me. I am lucky, and I thank God, my family was here with me through all of this, because having to go through all that by myself would have honestly been way too much. I just really can't. Human now today has been one of my biggest fears, but I just got off the phone with my husband. The old guy on the phone was worried sick about me, and he said how he spoke to a lawyer and that we will sort it all out as soon as possible, and inshallah they would file us a restraining order against Nina's entourage. Well, hopefully we should not see them again, as they are unlikely to get invited at any family celebration in future till the next couple of months, when we will find out if they end up behind bars for a while. Man, I pray this is the case, because never do I want to encounter these people again. I don't know what they thought or wanted to accomplish with whatever stunt they managed today, but based on the impression formed, I think that lot are really a tad psycho in all probability, and at this rate close enough for me not to see you folks ever. Update 4. Hello, I'm back here again. I know it has been weeks, and for that, I apologize. This update is long overdue. I was busy all over taking care of the baby, and I also had to start working again. I work from home, yet still incredibly busy. A lot has changed since my last update. First, my husband resigned from this new job, and he informed us that he was going to live with us, because he did not want his baby girl to grow up without him there. That makes him want to build something of his own, so it's time to put in the work. For now, he's just enjoying being a stay-at-home dad, and I can't be more excited for him. I work enough that it will support both of us, and my parents said they do what they can to give me help, till we get up on our feet again. They will also invest in whatever he chooses to bootstrap. Plus, we have a ton of savings, so financially speaking, we are all set. A few weeks ago, my parents finally returned home, but we still share and FaceTime almost every day. Your daughter so much, as one would. So whatever happened to Nina and her pack of bullies that I had a little bit of trouble with the last time she was featured here? Therefore, they have all gone to jail and will remain there for the next 3 months. Find a lot of money and will go to prison for 3 months, as well as be on community service at some point when they get out. Obviously, they did have to pay damages for my windows, but I was able to get a restraining order against them all as well. From here on, I think it's very doubtful that we will ever have to orchestrate the escape of something like this, and for it, am truly thankful. Now, it will be only my husband, me, and our daughter. I am actually really excited for the next few months, just because what I